In the United Kingdom and the Crown Dependencies, any household watching or recording live television transmissions as they are being broadcast is required to hold a television license. Businesses, hospitals, schools and a range of other organizations are also required to hold television licenses to watch and record live TV broadcasts. Since the 1st of April 2010, the annual license fee has been £145.50 for colour and £49 for black and white. Income from the license is primarily used to fund the television, radio and online services of the BBC. The total income from license fees was £3.735 billion in 2014-15, of which £613.4 million, or 16.4%, was provided by the government through concessions, for those over the age of 75. Thus, the license fee made up the bulk of the BBC's total income of £4.805 billion in 2014-2015. Operation of the licensing system. License fee collection and use. The TV license fee is a tax collected by the BBC and primarily used to fund the radio, television and online services of the BBC itself. This type of tax is known as a hypothecated tax. License fee collection is the responsibility of the BBC's Finance and Business Division. Although the money is raised for its own use, the BBC does not directly use the collected fees. The money received is first paid into the government's consolidated fund. It is subsequently included in the vote for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport in that year's Appropriation Act, and passed back to the BBC for the running of the BBC's own services. The money also finances programming for S4C and the BBC World Service, as well as to run BBC monitoring at Caversham. Legal framework. In 1991, the BBC assumed the role of TV licensing authority with responsibility for the collection and enforcement of the license fee. The BBC is authorised by the Communications Act 2003 to collect and enforce the TV license fee. Section 363 of the Act makes it against the law to install or use a television receiver to watch or record any television programs as they're being broadcast without a TV license. Section 365 of the same Act requires the payment of the TV license fee to the BBC. The license fee is formally set by the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport by the use of statutory instruments. The relevant statutory instruments of the Communications Regulations 2004 and amendments since that time, such as the Communications Regulations 2010, as well as prescribing the fees. The regulations also define television receiver for the purposes of the law. For people living in the Channel Islands and Isle of Man, TV licensing law is extended to their areas by orders made by their own governments. As part of its enforcement regime, the BBC is authorized to carry out surveillance using powers defined by the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000 and the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Order 2001. The BBC is permitted by the latter order to use surveillance equipment to detect unlicensed use of television receivers, as the public body responsible for issuing TV licenses. Licensing information held by the BBC in on the BBC's behalf by TV licensing contractors is subject to the Freedom of Information Act 2000. The BBC withholds some information on license enforcement using exemptions under the Act, in particular, under Section 31, which permits the withholding of information on crime prevention grounds, and under Section 43, which allows the BBC to retain information judged commercially sensitive. TV Licensing Management Team. The TV License Management Team, which is part of the Finance and Business Division of the BBC, oversees the TV licensing system. The TV License Management Team is based at the BBC-wide City buildings in London. The majority of TV licensing administration and enforcement activities are carried out under contract by private companies. The TV License Management Team monitors the performance of the contractors. TV licensing brand trademark. The BBC pursues its license fee collection and enforcement under the trading name TV Licensing, but contracts much of the task to commercial organisations. TV licensing is a trademark of the BBC used under license by companies contracted by the BBC that administer the television licensing system. Concerning the relationship of the BBC brand with the TV licensing brand, the BBC's position is, the TV licensing brand is separate from the BBC brand. No link between the two brands should be made in customer-facing communications, in particular, use of the BBC name and logo. However, it also states that the rules for internal communications and communications with suppliers are different, and the name BBC TV Licensing may also be used within department names or job titles for BBC employees. TV licensing contractors and subcontractors. Capita. A major contractor is Capita, which specializes in outsourcing for government projects. Capita is responsible for the administration and enforcement of the TV license fee. It is expected that Capita will earn £1.10 billion, £1.55 billion from its contract with the BBC if it runs its maximum 15 years from July 2012. The services carried out by Capita on behalf of the BBC include dealing with TV license queries, processing TV license applications and payments, and the maintenance of the license database. Enforcement tasks include visiting addresses, identifying people watching TV without a license, taking statements, and achieving prosecutions of TV license evaders. TV licensing debt collection is carried out by Kinika, which is a third-party debt collection agency owned by Capita. Capita's TV licensing headquarters is based at India Mill in Darwen, Lancashire. Capita employs a number of subcontractors for part of its TV licensing operations, one important one being Computer Sciences Corporation, which provides and modernizes the required IT infrastructure. Since 2004, Capita has undertaken a proportion of TV licensing administration at locations outside of the UK and has progressively increased the amount of work processed overseas each year. However, as of 2013, Capita has not set up any overseas call centres to carry out TV licensing work, and it would need the BBC's permission to do so in the future. Some of Capita's TV licensing work is carried out in Mumbai, India. Proximity London Limited. Marketing and printing services, including reminder letters and license distribution, are carried out by Proximity London Limited. Avis Media. Media services are contracted to Avis Media. Other contractors involved in TV licensing include PayPoint, which provides over-the-counter services in the UK, and the Post Offices, which provide the same services in the Isle of Man and Channel Islands. Also involved are AMVBBDO Limited, who provide advertising services, and Fishburne Communications Limited, who carry out public relations. Duration of a TV license. A TV license, once issued, is normally valid for a maximum of 12 months. The period of its validity depends on the exact day of the month it is purchased. This is because TV licenses always expire at the end of a calendar month. If a license were to be obtained in September 2014, for example, it would expire on the 31st of August 2015. Thus the period of validity would vary between 11 and 12 months depending how early in the month it was bought. If an existing license is renewed on time, the new license will last the full 12 months. The BBC sometimes issues short-dated licenses in situations when a license is renewed after the expiry date of the previous license. The BBC does this as it assumes that TV was being watched in the interim period between expiry and renewal. Short-dated licenses are set to expire 12 months after the previous expiry date. If a UK resident aged 74 years wishes to purchase a TV license, they can apply for a short-term TV license to cover the time until they reach 75 when they become eligible for a free license in the UK. Short-term licenses for 74-year-olds are also available on the Isle of Man and Guernsey. If a TV license is no longer needed for an address, it is possible to cancel a license and apply for a partial refund. The amount refunded will depend on the time left to the expiry date. Normally only full quarters of an unexpired license period are refunded. The BBC may also revoke a license under certain circumstances. Cost of a license. The level of the fee is decided following periodic negotiations between the UK government and the BBC Trust. From 1988 to 2010, the license fee was increased annually each April. Before 1988, increases in the license fee happened at irregular intervals, sometimes a few years passing between changes. Since April 2010, the license fee has remained constant. Payment methods. The BBC allows the following forms of payment of the license fee: direct debit. Payments may be made annually, quarterly or monthly. Debit a credit card. Annual payment. PayPoint. Annual payments may be made at PayPoint outlets by cash or debit card. Monthly or weekly payments may also be made by holders of a TV licensing payment card. TV licensing payment card. Holders of this card will have a payment plan showing when and how much they need to pay. Payments may be made weekly or monthly at PayPoint outlets. Payments may also be made online, by phone or by text message. TV licensing savings card. This is a way for a license fee holder to save for a subsequent license. If enough money for the new license is saved up, a new license is sent automatically. Otherwise the balance has to be paid for. Check and postal orders. Annual payments may be made by post by these methods. Fax electronic transfer. Annual payments for renewal licenses only. The payment methods mean that the license fee is paid for either completely or partially in advance. Annual payments require complete payment in advance. For monthly direct debit, a new license is paid off in 6 monthly installments of just over £24 a month. Renewal licenses are paid for in 12 monthly installments starting 6 months before expiry of the license in force, starting 6 months before the renewal date. Quarterly payments made using direct debit carry an additional cost of £5 per year, or £1.25 a quarter, which is included in the license fee total. This addition is described as a small charge in the generic letter issued by TV licensing to those paying by direct debit, and on the TV licensing website it is justified with by paying quarterly. The majority of your license is paid for as you use it. This differs from our other installment schemes, where at least half of the license fee is collected in advance. As a result, quarterly payments incur a small premium of £1.25 per quarter, which is included in your payment. Typically, direct debit schemes in the UK for major utilities or publicly provided services operate in a reverse way. UK, granting a discount to direct debit payers. In the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man, over-the-counter services are provided by the Post Office rather than by PayPoint outlets. Concessions over 75s. In the United Kingdom, free TV licenses are available to those aged over 75. Funding for these licenses by the Department for Work and Pensions is due to be gradually cut between 2015 and 2021. The concession covers the whole household, so that even if just one member of the household is over 75, then a free TV license may be applied for to cover all the residents. The Isle of Man has an identical scheme funded by the Isle of Man Department of Social Care. In the Channel Islands, the situation is more complicated. For example, residents of the islands of Guernsey, Alderney and Herm who are over 75 can apply for a free TV license to cover the household. In addition, over 65s in receipt of state benefits may be eligible for the concession. However, there are no over 75 concession available for residents of Sark, which is part of the bailiwick of Guernsey. On the island of Jersey, the concessionary licenses are available on a means-tested basis. Blind or severely sight-impaired concessions licenses are half price for the legally blind. In order to receive the concession, the blind or severely sight-impaired person must apply to the TV licensing blind concessioned group with proof of impairment. The proof is either a copy of the document of blind registration or a certificate from an ophthalmologist. The concessionary TV license covers TV use by the whole household. Residential care homes. Those aged over 60 and in residential care homes can get accommodation for residential care licenses for £7.50 a year. Total license sales. TV license sales figures were quoted by the BBC to be £25.562 million in the year 2014-15, including £4.502 million concessionary licenses for the over 75s, which were paid for by the UK government. The equivalent figures for the year 2013-14 were £25.478 million total licenses, including 4.328 million licenses for the over 75s. In 2014-15, the BBC estimated that there were 26.916 million licensable properties in the UK, indicating that if the BBC estimates are correct, around 95% of properties are correctly licensed. The total income generated from license fees was £3.735 billion in 2014-15. The vast majority of TV licenses are for colour TV. For example, there were 10,461 black and white TV licenses in force on the 31st of August 2014, compared to 25,460,801 colour TV licenses. The BBC has also stated that, during the financial year 2013-14, a total of 41,483 blind concessionary licenses were issued in the UK, of which 29 were blind concessionary black and white licenses. Channel Islands. In January 2012, there were 36,261 colour licenses in force in Jersey as compared to 77,480 addresses on the TV licensing database for the island. This would suggest around 53% of Jersey addresses did not have a TV license at the beginning of 2012. The comparable figures for Guernsey are 23,673 licenses in force in January 2012 and 40,263 addresses on the database at the end of December 2011. Thus, there were around 41% unlicensed properties in Guernsey at the beginning of 2012. History. When television broadcasts in the UK were resumed after a break because of the Second World War, it was decided to introduce television license fee in order to finance the service. When first introduced on the 1st of June 1946, the license covering the monochrome-only single-channel BBC television service cost £2. The license was originally issued by the General Post Office, which was then the regulator of public communications within the UK. The GPO also issued licenses for home radio receivers powered by mains electricity and was mandated by laws beginning with the Wireless Telegraphy Act 1904 to administer the licensing system. Households which bought a TV license did not need to hold a separate radio license, as the TV license covered both TV and radio reception. The BBC started regular TV transmissions in colour from the summer of 1967. On the 1st of January 1968, a colour supplement of £5 was added to the existing £5 monochrome licence fee. The combined colour licence fee was therefore £10, the equivalent of £156.40 as of 2015. The current cash cost is £145.50 for colour TV and £49 for monochrome TV per household. The radio-only license was abolished on February 1, 1971, when it was £1.25, so the equivalent of £19.55 in 2015 prices. On April 1, 1991, the BBC took over the administration of television licensing in the UK, assuming the responsibility of license fee collection and enforcement. Since this date, the BBC has been the statutory authority for issuing television licenses, although the UK government retains certain powers and responsibilities with regard to TV licenses. In July 2002, the BBC awarded Capita the contract to manage the TV licensing system, replacing the Post Office. In January 2006, the Office of National Statistics classified the license fee as a tax. Previously, this payment had been designated a service charge. License fee expenditure. The BBC Trust gives the following information for expenditure of license fee income during the year 2009-10 of £3.56 billion, 66% all TV, 17% national and local radio, 6% online e.g. BBC websites, player, 11% other e.g. transmission and license fee collection costs *. Since April 2014, the BBC World Service on radio and BBC Arabic television have been funded from the license fee. Prior to this date, they were funded by a grant from the government's Foreign and Commonwealth Office. The World Service cost the BBC £243 million in the 2014-15 financial year. The BBC also paid £229 million in 2014-15 to fund broadband rollout, partial funding of the Welsh channel S4C, and a contribution towards the costs of local TV. BBC World News and the BBC's other international television channels are operated commercially and will continue to not receive license fee money. The revenues they generate supplement the license fee in financing the UK services. In addition, the BBC Alba Gaelic language television service is predominantly funded by MG Alba, an organisation funded by the Scottish Government. During 2007-2008, the BBC stated that 3.6% of the license fee was spent on collection. TV license legal requirements. when a TV license is required. According to an Act of Parliament, a TV license must be obtained for any device that is installed or used for receiving a television program at the same time as it is received by members of the public. According to TV licensing, you need a TV license to use any television receiving equipment such as a TV set, digital box, DVD, a video recorder, PC, laptop, or mobile phone to watch or record television programs as they're being shown on TV. Portable televisions and similar equipment such as laptops and mobile phones powered by internal batteries are covered for use anywhere under a license held for their owner's residence. On the 1st of September 2016, the conditions under which a television license is required changed to include receiving on-demand program services provided by the BBC, such as using the iPlayer catch-up service. However, there are few exceptional cases when live TV may be watched without a license. When a TV license is not required, it is not necessary to own a TV license for the purpose of operating a digital box used with a hi-fi system or another device that can only be used to produce sounds. Installing and using a television set solely as a closed-circuit TV monitor. Using a TV to play pre-recorded DVDs of videos. Using a TV as a digital radio receiver. Using a digital box to listen to radio through a TV. Using a TV as a monitor for a computer games console. Watching catch-up TV services when the program is not live. A program previously recorded on properly licensed premises and then watched on unlicensed equipment is outside the scope of the Communications Regulations 2004, because it is not received at the same time as it is received by members of the public. Although such recordings may infringe copyright, TV licensing offers the following advice to those who have a TV but who wish to make it clear that they do not need a license. Remove the television from the aerial. Cover the aerial socket so that it can't be used. Ensure that when channels on the television are selected, no television signal is received. However, TV licensing also says that it is not compulsory to follow this advice. To listen to digital radio on a TV, for example, it would be necessary to attach the TV to an aerial and tune the TV to different channels. The BBC has made it clear that it is legal to listen to digital radio using a TV without holding a TV license. According to Ofcom, TV transmissions over the Internet are a grey area which in future might make fees based on television ownership redundant. In 2005, a green paper by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport included suggestions of either a compulsory levy on all households or even on ownership of PCs as well as TVs. However, TV licensing have since stated that use of any device receiving transmissions at or about the same time as they appear on TV requires a license. The BBC is aware that new technology represents a threat to its revenue. A recent BBC report states, there is a continued threat to the growth in TV license sales from the increasing number of people consuming television, in a way that does not need to be licensed. It used to be the case that televisions receiving a transmission from outside the UK did not need a license, but this was changed by the Communications Act 2003, so that the reception of television from any source requires a TV license. In 2012, more than 400,000 households informed the BBC that they did not need a TV license. According to the BBC, the average number of addresses in the UK with a no license needed status in the 2013 calendar year was 1,879,877. In the month of June 2013, 5,043 NLN declarations were made to the BBC on the grounds that the address was only watching catch-up TV. Exceptions to the TV licensing regime. There are a few exceptions to the TV licensing regime where live TV may be watched without a TV license being held for that property. These cases are Crown immunity. According to the BBC, neither the Communications Act 2003 nor the Communications Regulations 2004 bind the Crown. Thus, the Crown is not subject to the TV licensing regime. Quote, prison authorities can apply for Crown immunity to allow prisoners to watch TV in the cells, for example, without a TV license. Events of national importance. The BBC can grant a dispensation for the temporary use of TV sets away from the licensed address in what it calls exceptional circumstances. One example of this was the screening of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee celebrations in 2012. There are well-defined criteria for when this exception is valid. Foreign ships. According to the BBC, foreign ships will not need a license. Number of licenses required per address. A license is required to watch live TV transmissions anywhere, including residential and business premises. For residential premises, only one license is required per household per address, regardless of the number of licensed devices or the number of members of the household. However, the license itself is always held in the name of an individual. A rented property in multiple occupation by a joint tenancy agreement is considered by TV licensing as one household and requires only one license. But a rented property with multiple separate tenancy agreements is not considered a single household, and each tenant may require a separate license. For example, a house in multiple occupation may have private bedrooms and shared communal areas. If 5 occupants share such a property with individual tenancy agreements, then they may require up to 5 television licenses if each private room contains a television receiver, while a similar property housing 5 occupants under joint tenancy agreement may require only one television license. Television use away from home. Use of television in a static caravan is covered by the license held for the user's main address, provided there is no simultaneous use of television at both places, and the use of television in a touring caravan is always covered by the user's main home license. The use of a television set which is powered solely by its own internal batteries is covered for any address by the user's main home license, but requires a separate license if it is plugged into the mains or other external power source, such as a car battery. This also applies to TV-enabled mobile telephones. Students during term time may not need a separate TV license if one is held at the permanent home address if they watch TV on a device powered solely by its own internal batteries. Specifically, in order to be able to watch TV without a license at the term time address, the following must be true. The out-of-term address must be covered by a TV license. Any TV receiving equipment used must be powered solely by its own internal batteries. The TV equipment must not be connected to an aerial or plugged into the mains.